Thanks for joining me. I think it's important to reflect on things we already know, or perhaps cover ground that we have already covered, so to speak. In my experience, some things can be easily overlooked or just plain forgotten. So much information is coming at us that it's hard to sort through what is credible info versus disinfo. So many are focused on intel or current events right now that it's all information overload, in my opinion. Not to mention frustrating. The plus side to refocusing our attention is that we can zero in on details and remember that there isn't anything new under the sun. Evil and good do exist and is a choice for each of us on which we'll. So the first author that I read that was sounding the alarm on all of this globalism and satanic agenda was Mr. Bill Cooper. So it's only fitting to reflect on his work first. So let's reread chapter 13 of his book, Behold a Pale Horse. And Mr. Cooper doesn't mince words. Quoting from page 240 from Behold a Pale Horse, Article 6 of the United States Constitution. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. The senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures, and all executive and judicial offices both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Are you beginning to understand that our U.S. Constitution was circumvented a long time ago by previous executive, judicial, and legislative administrations by signing unconstitutional treaties with the UN? So Mr. Cooper points out, and I quote, "Have we already joined a one-world government? U.S. sovereignty, fact or fiction?" The executive, judicial, and legislative branches of the U.S. government have followed the policy that the United Nations Treaty approved under the UN Participation Act of 1945 on behalf of the United States of America by Harry S. Truman and the United States Senate, which treaty supersedes the United States Constitution under the terms of Article 6 of the United States Constitution. The Council on Foreign Relations created the United Nations. Their member agents, Alger Hiss and Leo Pazvolsky, did the paperwork, but the honors went to a special committee appointed by President Roosevelt to draw the first draft of the charter. The charter was rushed through the U.S. Senate without printed copies to guide the senators. It was explained to them by Russian-born Pazvolsky. The charter conferred no real power on the General Assembly. All the power was in the Security Council, where the veto was. The Senate would not have ratified the charter, except that the American delegation had a right to veto if our interests were threatened by action of other members. Included in this charter was and is Article 25. Member nations agree to accept and carry out the decisions of the Security Council in accordance with the present charter. Okay, so skipping forward but still quoting, just so we have a better understanding of what this means, any law passed in your state will be rescinded or abolished if it is in conflict with the resolutions of the General Assembly. I can tell you with no reservations whatsoever that all of the intelligence organizations of the United States work directly for the United Nations in concert with the secret government toward the sole purpose of the destruction of the sovereignty of the United States of America and the bringing about of the one world government. The authority cited for their efforts is Article 6 of the Constitution, the United Nations Treaty, and the UN Participation Act of 1945, signed by Harry S. Truman, with the advice and consent of the U.S. Senate. This should help you to understand how our laws are being made and who is making them. Skipping forward a little bit for time purposes, but still quoting, quote, "The new test of constitutionality will apply to all legislation by Congress since 1945, which deals with any of the 5 fields of endeavor. Any judge deciding on the validity of legislation must have 2 books before him, one the Constitution of the United States, and the other the Charter of the United Nations. If he does not find authority for the act in the Constitution, he will find it in the Charter. This is the exact situation that we're dealing with. The question to be answered is this: under which form of government do the people of the United States prefer to live? Manifestly, we cannot operate under both." And still quoting, quote, "Taking us into the UN may seem to have been done legally by the President and Senate, but the act is still unlawful because it is unconstitutional, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land," close quote. We're going to stop here for now because the next part of this chapter that we're going into is a little more lengthy, so for time purposes. But I think we're starting to get the picture here, and I think we're starting to understand why the year 1945 was so important, or number 45. I think we also have a much better understanding of why the previous administration under Sotero, for a lack of a better word, on whichever name you choose to use for him, why he was interested in becoming a leader of the Security Council for the United Nations. Now we're starting to have a much better picture of part of what the whole agenda has always been.